This is Ziwa Rhino Sanctuary, a home to over 33 southern white rhinos, other wildlife species, and the nucleus of bird species. Before any tourist is ushered in, one has to strictly follow the standard operating procedures put in place, like hand washing, temperature checked, and personal details noted. Rhino Fund, Uganda, negotiated a lease agreement with Ziwa Rhino and Wildlife Ranch, which was to run for 30 years. Unfortunately, they disagreed and Rhino Fund left, so the rhinos were handed over to Uganda Wildlife Authority. It should be noted that on 20th April 2021, Uganda Wildlife Authority took a drastic measure to close the sanctuary after a misunderstanding ensued between Ziwa Rhino and Wildlife Ranch and Rhino Fund Uganda. After 3 months of constant consultation and engagement with the two parties, in a joint statement by Uganda Wildlife Executive Director Sam Wanda on behalf of Uganda Wildlife Authority and Ziwa Rhino and Wildlife Ranch, the facility has resumed all tourism activities at the sanctuary.
Comes after UWA and Ziwa Rhino and Wildlife Sanctuary agreed to jointly manage the sanctuary and continue the rhino breeding program after the departure of Rhino Fund Uganda and the NGO that was managing the rhinos before. The two parties are in the process of negotiating a corporate agreement that will promote rhino breeding and management of tourism operations at the sanctuary.
We've agreed on the principles of the MOU, and all we're waiting for is to ratify that MOU. And for that, I give a lot of compliments to the Director of Conservation, Mr. Makombo. And I think you'll agree with me that there is absolutely nothing that is an impediment to this agreement. So therefore, be assured that the agreement will be signed. We just want to ratify it. And I think we are working with sober people.
It should be noted that since 2005, Uganda Wildlife Authority has been managing and giving security to the rhinos at the Ziwa Rhino Sanctuary. The ranch, that is close to 72 square kilometers, is small for the increasing rhino numbers, and thus Uganda Wildlife Authority is contemplating to translocate them to other national parks.
So working on the transfer of some, not all, some of the rhinos to a national park, and we want to do that as soon as possible. The only limiting factor is that we do not have the resources now because of the impacts of COVID that have reduced our revenue. But as soon as we get the money, we'll move some of the rhinos away from here because this place has a limit on the numbers.
Uganda Wildlife Authority and Ziwa Rhino and Wildlife Sanctuary will coordinate and jointly deploy staff at the sanctuary, with Uganda Wildlife Authority taking the central role of rhino security and monitoring. Mwanda says the partial closure of the inter-district movement will not necessarily affect tourists as long as they observe the standard operating procedures. Uganda Wildlife Authority assured the public that the Rhino Sanctuary will continue to be a center of excellence for the rhino breeding and will cooperate with the neighboring communities to safeguarding the rhinos. Zahra Abigaba, UBC.